Hi, everyone, and welcome to Before You Go, the podcast about the conversations we so often avoid around death, grief, and the way we remember. I'm your host, Matt Brooke, and this series is recorded in collaboration with the brilliant team at Impica PR. So today we're talking about something that sits right at the heart of modern funerals, how technology, when it's done well, can make a goodbye feel deeply personal rather than just another service. My guest knows more about that than almost anyone. James Crossland is the founder of Obitus, the company behind the music, tribute, streaming, and keepsakes that help families turn a service into something that truly reflects the person they're saying goodbye to. We're going to talk about what real personalisation looks like, the moments that matter most, and how technology can support a farewell. James, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's always nice to talk about these kind of things. We talk about it a lot internally, and we might have individual conversations, you and I. But it's always nice to be able to share those ideas with a wider audience.
Thanks, James. For a bit of a background, I've had the good fortune of working with James and Obitus for a number of years, but in totality, for the last 5 years or so, with Obitus available at each of our crematoria locations across the UK. I know you very well, James. I know the business very well. For anyone who might not know, give us a quick rundown. What is Obitus and how did it come about?
Yeah, that's great. So look, Obitus, we're the UK's leading provider of audiovisual experiences to bereavement venues, and so what that means is that we're really focused on that moment that families have inside the chapel. So obviously, of a funeral service or a funeral experience, there's a lot of elements that go into it, but probably the most special, the most intimate moment is that when you're in the chapel, as you guys know very well, and it's sort of the most sensitive, where it needs possibly some of the highest levels of care and attention and to make sure that nothing goes wrong, because as we all know, you only get one opportunity to run that funeral perfectly. So what Obitus does is we provide all the behind the scenes technology and services that help deliver those experiences inside the chapel. Typically that is with music, that is with visual imagery, whether that's photos, whether that's visual tributes, or whether it's live streaming, and then it's all the audio systems and the video systems that run all that.
Your work often goes unnoticed, I would say, in the sense of you turn up to a crematorium venue and you have access to anything that is commercially available effectively, and you have these wonderful tributes, you have these wonderful options for families, and the tech's kind of there, right? And so from a family perspective, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
But actually you guys are pivotal in what I would call like the personalization movement. As families move to making different choices when it comes to funerals and celebrations of life. It doesn't feel like that long ago, but it was a long time ago, really, where the standard would be church, couple of hymns, organ, and half an hour services. But actually now we're seeing a whole raft of personalization, whether it's choice of music or something quirky in a visual tribute, the way that families are arriving to the crematorium or to the venue, who's taking the service, what the congregation is dressing. It literally is endless. So having said that, we use the word personalisation a lot in the industry, but what does it actually mean to you, and what does it look and feel like when you get it right for a family, which, can I point out, is a fantastic success rate. You really are the epitome of reliability in this industry. So what does it actually mean to you to start off with?
Thank you, Matt. As you know, I never like to go entirely in a straight line. So let me just answer a slightly different. Just to pick up on a point you said there that I think is so interesting, is that idea of just how long ago it was. And I did a speech earlier this week at an industry conference, and one of the things I wrote was, as little as 15 or 20 years ago, the standard was to have, as you say, a couple of hymns. If it's at the crematorium, very limited choice. You might not even be allowed sort of modern music in some cases, depending on who was taking the service, and definitely there often wasn't those facilities to have anything too fancy. Definitely nothing like screens. And I wrote that, and then I thought to myself, that's 2005, 2010, kind of range. That's. We had the iPhone then. We had so much stuff then. That can't be right. And I checked that with a few, very well-known industry colleagues, and they all looked at it and they're like, yeah, that's absolutely right. So it's just remarkable to think that so recently, given the proliferation, there might not have been quite Netflix and streaming like we did, but we did have YouTube. We did have all these modern technologies, audio-visual things in the palms of our hands even back then. There was very limited choice when it actually came to a funeral, and the idea of personalisation. I mean, we joke, but sometimes in the worst cases, the minister just kind of read a script and used the name that they used last time. I mean, it was a real shame that was kind of still going on. So there's a very basic level, as you know, the very a more traditional even funeral service now. I think it has a lot more personalisation to it, and they are taking on board, what music might the family want, what was personal or intimate to them, and so that's that bit of history. Let's just to kind of establish the context of how far we've come. So then I think to then take your question, which is what does it mean when we get it right? I think that idea of, I think one of the most powerful comments I ever heard from a family was when someone asked us to make it easier to put the name of the deceased on the big screens that we have in the chapel as they walked in. And we've been doing visual tributes for a while. That wasn't, having photos and things like that on the screen wasn't, we were familiar with that. But when we started, it sounds silly, but being able to add the name there, it was a relatively simple technological change because we already had the name, and so it was just displaying the name on the screen as a kind of overlay. And what we started getting was this consistent feedback of, thank you so much for personalising the chapel to, mum or dad or whoever it might have been. And you went, wow, that is really... And even now as I'm saying it, my kind of hairs are slightly standing on end. I just can't tell you how powerful that was. So I suppose from that impetus has come sort of where we progressed today. So in the best part today, I won't kind of jump to exactly everything we do, but the best part today is that the family arrive and they feel through what we're able to do, with audio visuals and things like that, that chapel for that moment in time was for them, and really was for mum or dad or whoever it might have been, and that is to make that chapel feel like that's theirs, I think is really special.
Yeah, completely agree. You talk about one thing there in terms of the name, but the one that also sticks out to me, which actually I think was a time when your kind of prevalence in services really kind of grew, and at some rate was during the pandemic. And of course, there was in the very early days when chapels went down to no more than 6 and things like that. The one thing there was the removal of hymn books.
Yeah.
And almost instantly, overnight, it was like one day everybody was having to pick up these books in order to find the number for the hymn that they were due to sing. And then the next day you had found a solution, you had got the words up on the screen.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't think I've ever been in one of our crematoria since and seen a hymn book picked up. So it just goes to show, how you as an organisation pick something up, you see the betterment for families, you run with it, and you absolutely, you do that day in, day out.
And I think you're right as well, Matt. And what was also happening at that same time was we'd started getting more people sending us just images, and so we then sort of said to ourselves, well, why isn't? And as some of our elements, people are asked to pay a little bit extra, not a lot, but a little bit, just for the the sort of administration or the cost of putting something together. And we started to see more and more people adding photos. And I think for us as a company, we really do try to be, when we talk about being customer first, which we talk about a lot, it genuinely is that customer first. Because as I've always had the principle of do what's right for the family, whatever thing that might be, and then we'll work out the rest of it later on. And so as we started to see that, we were also trying to push to have, I gave my team the challenge of let's make it super easy so that anyone can get that photograph of their loved one, which is often used to be in a photo frame on the coffin, and let's put that on the screen. And I remember we were just in the middle of sort of implementing that and rolling out that new process when the pandemic came along, and unfortunately we sort of had to drop some of the, I say the tech, but some of the behind the scenes stuff that was just going to make that easier. But we still then committed to making anyone that sent us one photograph will at no extra charge, that we'll just get that image there. And I think that you've then seen off the back of that uptake in that to make sure that there is always that image there. And so it's lovely to see that so much more often in the chapel, because the alternative is that they just don't have when you do see a chapel with no image, no name, no whatever, and there's just a coffin there. I mean, yes, the people in the chapel know that who's there and what they're there for, but it's somehow less special.
And that probably was the entry to personalisation and understanding that funeral trends, family wishes were changing.
Yeah.
So I mean, on that, the personalisation theme still, funerals are live events, right? You can only do them once. Things change at last minute. Families make new decisions.
Yeah.
How do you balance being flexible with making sure that everything still runs smoothly?
And you're absolutely right, Matt. You've got it. You've hit the nail on the head there. They're ultimate, and I could probably draw some clever graph or thing between flexibility versus reliability. And the more flexible you get, generally the harder it is to get reliability, and the more reliable you get, you lose flexibility. And of course, the fudged answer is it's a balance, and we have to try and, again, internally we have. So what we try to do is put a kind of structure in place so that we can so that we receive all of the different content that we get every single day from families, and while we have an easy way that they can send it to us, they inevitably, families, funeral directors, whoever, send it to us in all sorts of ways, down to Facebook messages and WhatsApp and whatever, which, by the way, if anyone's listening, please, I don't recommend. But that we take that content, however it's got to us, and make sure that the right content is in the right place for the right families. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that, and as you know, we're very successful at doing that. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to be inflexible in saying, please deliver it in this certain way by this certain time. But what we know is, and as you know, on the very rare occasions it goes wrong, what we can normally do is trace that back to something where we're going, but then that came in too last minute, or it came in via a completely alternative route, or it came in whatever else. So what we try and do is have a relatively simple way of making sure that the time and the location and the whatever of receiving that information is consistent, so that we can deliver the most consistent service to the families, because as you know, that's what people really care about the most, is to make sure that they have that imagery available, or music or whatever it might be, at the right place at the right time.
It's such a simple process, actually, once you get your head around it, to be able to have such a heavy impact on a funeral. And we're really fortunate that all of the funeral directors that we work with are really well versed and understand how to do these things. Yep. But it is something that I think probably people don't see, is actually how Obitus have made personalisation so accessible in a number of ways. And I would encourage anybody that hasn't seen some of your products, whether it be webcasts, whether it be visual tributes, to inquire and just have a look. It might not be for right now, but actually just having an idea of what's possible is amazing. One of the topics we were touching on was about music, and about how it is, in essence, has had a big impact on usage of hymns. Music is always deeply personal, right? Everyone's got different tastes, and every funeral that you see every week, you do very well to find the same track list twice, put it that way.
Oh yeah.
It's also a really tricky area to navigate. So is there anything that you can kind of share with us around, and maybe it might be important information for celebrants or for funeral directors as well as the families, about music choices and licensing? Because of course you can obtain anything that's commercially available, however you do get a lot of queries about things that aren't.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So no, it's about, again, coming back to that flexibility versus reliability. What we're just trying to make sure is that everything is in the right place at the right time, and then yes, is legal and correct. And yeah, the way that it works is that all the music that we play is legally available, licensed content. And so yeah, but I think it's just about it's just trying to understand often what is driving the decisions that people are asking for. Because yeah, there is that slight challenge, is that you just go, you can have anything you like, and then people sort of sometimes just come up with some wonderful suggestions, and the vast majority of the time we can get exactly what they need. And then sometimes if ever we are asked for requests where we simply cannot find an exact licensed version of that content, then it's just about providing them options and just saying, well, look, what you're after is this. This is almost exactly the same, is fully licensed. Is this acceptable? Or yeah. The other thing that we often have a challenge with is the difference between, you wouldn't believe how much stuff on the internet, particularly on YouTube, is incorrectly titled. So literally it's called this and actually it's this. So our team spend a lot of time sort of giving that feedback, and then you get this challenge where you say to people, you don't actually want this, you want this, and they go, no, I want that, and then you sort of like, well, do you want the correct title, or do you want the thing to sound the same, if you see what I mean? So look, these are all part of the challenges, but ultimately we are here to support families, funeral directors and officiants in that journey, to make sure that ultimately we're able to deliver that experience in the chapel that people want.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you a question. I don't expect you to know the exact number.
Is it a difficult one?
How many tracks are currently in the Obitus library?
It's a very good question, Matt, and I do know the answer to this because I saw it printed on something the other day. It is 700,000 at the moment.
700,000 pieces of music is
it's
mind-blowing.
It is a lot. Although I was once told that there are something like 30 million pieces of music in the world, which I'm not quite sure if I believe that figure either. But I think the key thing is just, it's the point is it's all out there and it's all possible to get. And sorry, the other thing I can say is sometimes if you can't obviously get it commercially available, we can actually ask the people that have licensed it, or the people that produced it. In 9 out of 10 cases, people just very quickly come back and say, yes, for a funeral, absolutely, you can do that. So that's the other option as well. But the point is just being able to find that content and make sure it's available.
Absolutely. The purpose of that question really was to try and open up and show families that actually, if it is something that you don't have, you're willing to try and go and get it, or if it's something that actually isn't necessarily licensed in the way that you can accept it at the moment, you'll also make every possible effort to go and find it. You live streaming. It became essential during the pandemic. It really did. It was something that, certainly from our perspective, it was a mainstay in every single service. It was the only way that families were going to be able to watch and attend funeral services of their loved ones. It really was incredibly important, and it has remained important. It really has stuck around. Is it still about accessibility, or do you think it's about something deeper, James?
Wow, somehow that's a difficult question. Is it about accessibility or is it about something deeper? I think I'd actually, can I fudge this and say it's about flexibility? No, I think it's about, increasingly nowadays we are used to being able to choose the time and place that we do things. We're used to being able to work or catch up with friends or whatever on the move wherever we want to be. Now, I'm not saying that let's also not suggest that we're sort of belittling the importance of a funeral to the point of I can't be bothered to do that at 10 o'clock, I want to do it at 2 o'clock. It's not quite like that, but I do think that people value that option of choosing the time and place, that they take that moment to reflect and remember that person that mattered something to them. Now the people that are probably closest or feel the impact of that funeral the most are probably always going to make them. I've got to be careful what I say now, but maybe the most effort to be there, or they're willing to go to the most effort to be there. But again, sometimes no matter how much they'd like to do it, if they are on the other side of the world and the funeral is taking place at short notice, and maybe there's some other major life, you hear other things, other major life events, whether it's weddings, graduations, you name it, where it's sort of it's hard to be in two places at once. The live streaming and or the recording afterwards just gives them the option, or indeed maybe it's the other side of things. Maybe it's someone that you didn't know that person maybe quite so well, but you still feel that you want to experience that a little, be a part of that, and therefore you watch it online. So I think it's a whole range of reasons why it happens, but I think it's that flexibility is the main thing. Just offering people that choice. And what we often see is that, surprising me now, if you speak to funeral directors, how often they say, even if it maybe sometimes wasn't selected as an option for the family to have a live stream, funeral directors will say that someone will ring them up, 10 minutes before the service starts, even though the main funeral directors are all there with the family, it's all happening. Someone will ring up the office and go, I'm just checking what the live stream details are for Bob Smith's funeral, and they sort of say, sorry, that wasn't available this time. But there is that expectation and that demand for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because it's been available for a long time. The live streaming ability has been available for a long time. But like you say, people use it for a whole myriad of reasons, whether it's location, sometimes like you say, short notice. Sadly, someone's ill, can't make it. Actually, families will put that on at late notice so that they can still be a part of it. Its accessibility of it is incredible and remains so to this day. I want to talk a little bit more about collaboration. So I will start by asking around what can funeral directors, celebrants, or even crematoria do differently to make the whole process smoother for families? How can we impact it?
It's a very good question. I think the biggest thing is just making sure that families are aware of the choice that's available to them. And I think that's the most sort of disappointing or frustrating thing from my perspective, is when we do hear or get messages from family or friends or whatever said, I didn't know that option was available. And you never want to in anything you do, you don't want to disappoint someone, whatever level you're working at, you want to correctly set expectations. And I think part of that is making sure that families know, whether it's, through discussing it with them, whether it's through it being on the right forms, whether it's just information available on websites, whether it's, leaflets that they can look at in their own time, that these are here as potential enhancements to their funeral experience, including the stuff that, like I say, we charge nothing extra for. So it's not a financial thing. It's just about, because there's lots of things that are available, as at no cost, or are included within the price of the full service funeral. So it's just make them available wherever possible, make them aware wherever possible.
Yeah, from our perspective, obviously we provide an element of aftercare to families who come back and see us, whether it's to memorialise or whether it's to have a cup of tea and have a chat about their loved one and stuff like that. And the one thing that I personally really hate to hear is, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. And 9 times out of 10, it always relates to something service related and quite often Obitus within that. So it's a really important conversation that we have, and we should continue to have and make sure that families are aware, because there is something in every line of what you do that can really positively impact family. The big ones, the recent history. So I want to talk about super venue. So for anybody that doesn't know what a super venue is, we being Westerly and Obitus in September 2024, this is a potted history of it, by the way, launched the world's first experiential venue at Gedling in Nottingham. It's an immersive venue where the whole chapel can be themed to anything that may have represented a family member or a friend or a loved one. And it's matched with lighting and automated blinds and obviously the music and the tributes and stuff that we've mentioned. And the response to it has been staggering. The response has been so overwhelmingly positive. We actually launched the world's second super venue in August, which is at Basildon in Essex. And then
the world's first in Essex.
Well, it'd be the world's first in Essex, yeah. I mean,
exactly,
I'm not sure that's technically correct like that way, but for the benefit of this, we'll absolutely accept it.
Right.
We will have the first in Scotland in the next 3 weeks when East Lothian Crematorium opens up east of Edinburgh, and then we'll have another 2 by the end of the year. We'll have Vale Royal in the north, in and around the Cheshire area, and we will have Sedgemoor, which will open up in the southwest. Vale Royal and Sedgemoor both retrospective fit out. So changing
Depending on when you publish this, Matt, is that an announcement?
Oh yeah, I was also doing speeches around the country at the last weekend, and
Right.
we were really fortunate enough to attend a seminar with all of many funeral directors, independent funeral directors in the country, and we formally announced it to a really positive response from all the sites that are involved. Really pleased with it. The impact has been really special. In the 14 months since we have launched the first one, we'll have 5. Which is incredible. So I know I've given a really brief introduction to what it is. James, tell us what have you seen in the last 14 months?
Yeah, look, we've seen an incredibly positive response from the people that have seen it and experienced it. So whether that be families or the officiants or funeral directors that are attending the venue, people just kind of go, wow, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but in some way, in sort of hindsight, it's no surprise. The initial concept for that came up through, me and others just kind of going around to some of, you sort of look at where venues are going, and back in the day it was a cinema, and then eventually you get to IMAX, and then eventually you get to things like the Sphere in Las Vegas as a kind of like the evolution of audiovisual. You look at certain exhibitions that are happening in London where they fill it with projection. You look at even something like Aber Voyage. That's where I hesitate to say the word entertainment, but if it's things like entertainment that leads it's entertainment that leads the way with audiovisual. That's what pushes it to go to the next level. So what we were then able to do in collaboration with Westerly was to say, let's take elements of that and put it into the chapel to really enhance that experience, and let's give families something that they takes personalisation to the next level.
Absolutely. It's very difficult to verbalise exactly what it can do.
Very difficult.
We find that when we go around and we show people go, oh, that's amazing, that's absolutely incredible. And I always say to them, you should go and see it. You will not understand it until you see it. So I would encourage anybody, if you are in Nottingham, whether you are in Edinburgh, whether you are in Cheshire, whether you are in Somerset, whether you are in Essex, actually, and do you know what, actually, if you're not in any of them, then go anyway. Make the effort to go and see them, because they are absolutely incredible. But you can do so much of them, whether it's theming the whole chapel to your loved one's favourite sports team, football team, rugby team, whether it's to more of a floral collection, their favourite coloured rose, whether they had a really keen interest in motorcycles or travelling, or, I'm just reeling off a few of about, I think we were talking before we did this, we're up to about 70 personalised options now. So for us to run through them wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
But there really is. It will be one of those things again where actually there is no end to the possibilities, and it's absolutely incredible. There will be many more next year. So if you live locally to one of our Westerly crematoria, please keep an eye out, because there is a really good chance that the super venue initiative will come to your venue in the not too distant future. I've got one more question, and then I've got a quick fire round for you, which is something a bit different. I know the question I would ask you is, you've seen thousands of services over the years. What's one story, one moment that's really stuck with you where you thought, yes, this is why we do it.
I do specifically remember one that I think was at one of your venues. It was at West Suffolk Crematorium. There had been some issue with and unfortunately, okay, there wasn't an issue with the funeral, by the way. That all went very well, but there was an issue beforehand, and it's issues where you kind of I think you can sometimes learn the most for things that are going wrong or potentially going to go wrong, and you know that there had been some tech change, there had been an issue. We were a much smaller company then. We didn't have quite the size of engineering or support teams around, and so it was me that jumped in the car that went to fix that issue. And I had the previous, a managing director of Westerly had been on the phone to me several times saying, do not mess this up, do not get it right. Things always are about to go wrong for the biggest funerals, and this was a big deal for various reasons. And we went down, we fixed the issue, and we did it. And I sat at the back of that funeral, and it was the music that played, I think, was Ever Loving by Moby, as one of the final tracks for that funeral. And it was just like the coming together of a very tough 24 hours to ultimately to make sure that these funerals went absolutely right, which is what all of us are always here to do, and just to kind of see that happen and to see that family experience of that funeral and to hear that music, which is really powerful music if you know it. So that was a really special and powerful moment for me that I will always remember, and I remember it every time that track comes on.
Amazing. And you're right, there are so many stories like that. Ones that Obitus have the pleasure, I suppose, in a way of being involved in every single day and being able to help and support families, just as Wesley do actually on that same vein. And thank you very much for that, James. Before we finish up, quick fire rounds. The first thing that comes to your mind, James, most popular song for a service.
Frank Sinatra, My Way.
Very good. Live streaming, always on or by request only?
Always on.
Favourite part of a funeral to personalise, music, visuals or keepsakes?
Visuals, for a way bigger impact.
One thing families often underestimate that actually make a huge difference.
Having a live stream so that people can see it if they can't be there.
Quirkiest tribute request you've ever seen?
Not safe for radio, but there was one in Kent. Any of my team listening know the one in Kent.
If you could invent one new feature for services tomorrow, what would it be?
Again, probably not safe for radio. Cloak machine.
Okay, amazing. One thing you wish every funeral director knew about working with Obitus?
That we really are flexible and we'll do whatever we want them to do. They want us to do.
What would you want your final song to be?
I Love Him by Moby.
And what 3 words would you want people to remember you by?
Oh my word, Matt. I don't know, fun, sensible, and caring.
I can attest to all 3. You are indeed those 3 things, James. Thank you so much. It's been brilliant to hear how technology can enhance a goodbye rather than, get in the way and of it, obstruct it. They really do complement services. And what I've taken from this conversation is that personalisation isn't always about the bells and whistles, actually, sometimes as well. It's about understanding what really matters to the people in the room, and giving them the tools that help them say what they need to say when perhaps they can't say it.
Yeah.
So we're really, really grateful for your time. If you found this conversation useful, please follow the podcast wherever you're listening and share it with someone who might be planning a service or supporting a loved one. Again, if you want to see the super venues, please feel free to pop into wherever any of them may be. Or if you've got any questions about anything Obitus related, please call either your local Westerly Crematorium or your local funeral director. James, where can people find out a little bit more about Obitus?
On obitus.com is our website where there's lots of information about our company for whoever you may be, whether you're a family member or a funeral professional, funeral director, venue. We're here to help.
Thank you very much, James. And these conversations, they are incredible to be part of. They are really meaningful. The early response to our podcast so far has been fantastic. I said to James before we recorded this, that actually when we were recording podcasts, as long as it impacted one person, it would be enough. And I just wanted to share that I received a message from somebody today to say that I listened to your podcast and it was exactly what I needed to hear at exactly the right time. And for me and for us, that is everything. It goes to show exactly why we do it. And because the truth is, these conversations are worth having before you go. And thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.